something really sneaky. So when
Uh-huh.
you sent me the Bitly link,
Uh-huh.
it pops up a Bitly page,
Yeah, that's new.
and and the Bitly page gives an ad that looks like a video meeting because it detected that it's a Zoom meeting. Isn't that evil?
Yes.
I would not
Yes.
use the I would not send people the Bitly link.
That's okay. I didn't see the ad. I just saw the you're going to, and I'm fine with a preview link. But now
Yeah.
that I know that it's including ads, I am less okay
It's
with
not
it.
it's not just including ads.
It's
It's including a sneaky ad that a person would click because it looks like a Zoom meeting. Like it's next level shitty.
I don't like the enshittification of everything. And Cory Doctorow's essays on enshittification are
Hmm.
must read.
Yeah, 100%. So yeah. It's like welcome to our terrible future.
I hate everything.
You should. Everything is hateable. It's worth
Yeah.
hating, except for us. We're
It's
lovable.
true. It's true. We are
Yeah.
excellent. We are caffeinated, or at least I am caffeinated.
Oh, I'm caffeinated. Oh yes.
So,
I'm. Yeah.
so I already told this to Fraser. I'm using this crazy headset because mistakes were made.
Mm.
I
What
I
kind of mistakes, Pamela? What did you do?
I usually use this little tiny cute lapel mic. And after streaming on Saturday, I wandered off, still wearing it,
Mm.
and then I left it on my desk purposefully so that I would remember where it was.
Okay. So can you somehow follow the trail by listening to the audio that was saved by the mic to your base station
No,
and like go
because
like what was I was talking
I had
I was
already
talking to somebody.
so the issue is I knew where it was this morning and it was
Yeah.
turned off. It was sitting on top of my planner, so I knew to bring it down with me. And then I picked it up and I went downstairs to make coffee. And
Mm.
and the dogs were like, "Hey, we've got to go outside." And I was like, "Well, I might as well check how things are doing outside." And somewhere between the coffee maker and the back door, which is enough cluttered space to lose a
Yes.
very small black box.
I'm thinking about that room in my mind right
Uh-huh.
now. When I was there, there was a CNC, a little mini CNC machine in your kitchen where
Yeah.
it belongs. Is that still there?
No, but we have so much other stuff. There are
Yeah.
multiple bicycles, there is cooking stuff,
Yeah,
there
in your
is
kitchen. Yeah,
all
in
the
your kitchen.
clutter of everything that just
Yeah.
gets dumped when you come in through the back door. There's all the clutter of the stuff from gardening that didn't get taken
Yeah.
back out to the garage.
Yeah.
And so somewhere in that chaos is my little
Yeah.
tiny black lapel mic.
So allow me to be the audience for you in this moment and to say that this microphone is bad. Mediocre, tinny, that's how I would describe it. Mediocre and tinny.
God damn it.
So, hmm?
I said, God damn it. I
Yeah.
should.
No, yeah, like it's probably too late
I
to
could.
find it.
Yeah.
But, what but like what kind of podcaster doesn't have a beautiful condenser mic sitting on their desk? Hmm?
The one who lost hers in the kitchen.
No, you lose your condenser mic. You
No,
used
it's
to
true.
remember the olden days when you used to have a microphone like mine?
Yeah, no, so the issue there is the condenser mic when I was rearranging my desk went up to my office with
Mm,
plans to replace my preamp.
mm,
So many mistakes have been made.
right, right. Okay, well, yeah. I mean, it's Alan Gross says it's fine, sounding fine to me. So if Alan Gross is cool with it, then I'm cool with it.
All right.
But I definitely hear, it just sounds little. You sound little,
I
and you
know.
should sound boisterous and big.
I know. I
So
know.
yeah, yeah,
I
um,
so many mistakes were made. But I'm here to tell you,
yeah,
groundhogs that eat grapes that have seeds and poop those seeds will
yeah.
cause grapes to grow in the most random places.
Okay, so this is exciting because those are like they're not going to breed true to what was originally grown,
Right.
but you're getting rootstock. And so it's going to be the fact that those grapes are growing means that these guys want to live in your environment.
Yes.
And so I would dig them up and put them in pots or like if any of them are growing in a place where you wouldn't mind having a grape there, then I would graft the various flavors of grapes that you want onto those guys that are growing because you should end up with really hardy grapes on those rootstocks. And
I
it's a super fun process. You cut the rootstock, you cut a piece that's the exact same size, you put it on the top, you get some rooting hormone, but it's easy to get at the nursery, tape it up, and boom, grapes like love are really good to do this with, and you end up with you can even make like kind of Franken grapes. So you can have one rootstock that is putting out 5 different varieties of seedless
Oh,
grapes.
that's cool.
Yeah,
Yeah, no,
yeah,
it's so it turns out that groundhogs don't necessarily poop in convenient locations.
mm.
So currently the grape is emerging from behind a shrubbery and eating the side of my house, including the gutters.
Yeah. So cut that bad boy back, dig them out, put them
Yeah,
somewhere where you want them, and then graft onto them. Like grapes are really uh tough.
yeah.
And so you could cut a grape like a friend of mine, he cuts his grapes back to just a little stalk every year. So they do with the wine grapes, right? They just cut them back to the very base piece, and then the whole thing goes again on the next season. So yeah, I'd find that guy, cut him, maybe this high,
Yeah.
dig him out, put him in his new home, his forever home, water him. I'm really excited. This is great. Water him really well,
Yeah.
and then put in some grafts onto them and see if it works.
I have a trellis that I've been trying to figure out what I wanted to grow on, and this seems like a perfectly good
Yeah,
answer
yeah.
because destroying the side of my house is not the right
No,
thing.
yeah, yeah. That's put that grape to work.
Yeah.
Give that grape a job. Not tear your house. Not tear your house apart. Give that grape, a task.
Yeah.
But like that's like this guy wants to live. This guy, like whatever combination of DNA from all of the seeds of all of the grapes that have been getting eaten, this is the one that
Yeah.
is going for it. This is going to be a good grape for you. And then for some of the future ones, I would just let them roll and let them get to grapes and see if the grapes taste good.
That
Because then it's a very hardy grape that you've grown, something that's perfectly adapted to your environment, and then you can keep going from there.
yeah.
Anyway, we should do our
We
jobs.
should. We
Yeah,
should.
but I have a sort of a similar story, which is that we have squirrels,
Oh,
but our squirrels are adorable. Our squirrels are teeny tiny little squirrels. They're
ours are not.
they're little. Their bodies are maybe I don't know 10 centimeters long, and then they have a little tail, so they're like a third the size of like a big gray squirrel.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they do not care about us one bit. They are not nervous or scared about us. And so I'll be sitting there on the couch outside, and a squirrel will roll over, climb up onto the couch with me, run around, nibble on things, examine, explore,
Oh, wow.
mess around behind the pillows, and then bust off into the forest again. And it's so cool to
That
be
is
around as they're doing this.
amazing. I
Yeah.
I've had chipmunks do that before we had murder dog, but now that we have murder dog, the
Mhm.
the, the wildlife is a bit more cautious.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. So our squirrels look like your chipmunks, I think.
yeah,
Teeny little guys, but they
but
are
they have
squirrels.
bushy tails.
Yes, ours have bushy tails.
Yeah, chipmunks
Yeah.
do not.
Yeah.
Um, but it's awesome because I'm starting my audio equipment and stuff. Chipmunks running across the lawn with a cherry tomato look like a super ball that has gained life.
That's awesome. Um, and then I had a
Hello.
big bear, come by, but I don't know
Oh,
if I mentioned that last week.
yeah,
So
you did last
it's
week,
bear
but did
season.
it come
Yeah.
back?
So we're seeing his poops all around. And you can tell it's him because they're monster
Oh,
poops. So
jeez.
yeah, yeah. All right, let me know
We
when
are
you're ready to do
recording.
your job. Okay. I am also recording. Astronomy Cast, episode 759, Commercial Lunar Landers. Welcome to Astronomy Cast, our weekly facts-based journey through the cosmos, where we help you understand not only what we know, but how we know what we know. I'm Fraser Cain. I'm the publisher of Universe Today. With me, as always, is Dr. Pamela Gay, a senior scientist for the Planetary Science Institute and the director of CosmoQuest. Hey, Pamela, how you doing?
I'm doing well. My audio is it's
Yeah,
doing
we should explain.
okay
You should
enough.
do the
Oh
explain
man.
of shame for why
Yeah.
your audio sounds a little tinny this week.
So I I'm normally using um a little tiny lapel mic, except I wandered off with it and I knew where it was this morning. And between my office upstairs and the studio downstairs, I stopped to make coffee and then got distracted by the dogs and the outside. And somewhere in my kitchen, I set
Yeah,
down the little tiny black box of audio goodness.
yeah,
And my kitchen is chaos incarnate of
yeah.
bikes and gardening stuff and cooking stuff and
Mm-hmm.
the stuff that gets dumped when you come in from the driveway.
Yes.
And so
So,
apparently, I will clean my kitchen just so I can find my
yeah. So
microphone.
everybody who's listening, start your engines. This is the first week of Pamela can't find her microphone.
Oh,
Let's see what happens next
jeez.
week. So if you hear this and we continue the joke, then things have gotten very serious. But I wouldn't be surprised if she starts getting creative and sort of repurposing other old gear to end what
I
is now going to become a running joke week after week after week.
I may have to steal a preamp from my husband and pull out one of the good condenser mics that requires a preamp because that may
Let
be
me know if you need some
easier.
gear recommendations. I'm using the Focusrite, and I really like it. So
So we have a I think it's M Audio Red. It's
that's older. Yeah,
it's
yeah.
older but
Yeah, I
solid.
don't think they're even. Yeah, it's solid. I don't
Yeah.
even know if they're even supporting it anymore. So anyway, that's something that the podcast listeners don't need to hear. Um, let's let's move on. Humanity has turned its focus back to the moon, sending a fleet of spacecraft to the lunar surface. Some are run by the government, but there's a whole new group of commercial landers ferrying instruments to the lunar surface. Is this the future of lunar exploration? We will talk about it in a second, but it's time for a break. And we're back. All right, let's talk about commercial lunar landers, exploration, because there's been a lot of activity already, and we're going to get to that. But I'd like to just focus on the history, and I think we should put this in context of what happened with the commercial crew program that NASA has already done. Like NASA has kind of really developed an interesting way, an interesting partnership in working with commercial providers to supply the International Space Station. So let's extend that to the moon.
I was actually going to go back earlier than that.
Oh,
Do
sure.
you
Yeah.
remember the days of Google Lunar X Prize?
Yep. Yep.
So back in the early 2000s, we had the Ansari X Prize that is what got us Scaled Composite lost it, launching their little badminton birdie of a spacecraft into space, flittering back down, taking off a few days later. They won the prize. Virgin Galactic bought themselves a space plane, and now we have one of the commercial options for space tourism. Well,
Hmm.
after the Ansari X Prize was won, we had the Google Lunar X Prize, which had the goal of having a team launch something to the moon entirely funded commercially, academically, donations, anything but government funding was illegitimate. It then had to travel across the surface of the moon. It could rove, it could flit, it could hop, it could dance, it could burrow. No one tried to dance or burrow.
Mm,
But they had to move a distance across the surface of the moon and then send back video.
mm,
Now, unfortunately, by 2015, it was realized one, we didn't really have anything we could launch with that that was up to the task at that point in time, and none of the teams were quite ready to go. So Google was like, we're calling it, guys. But a bunch of those teams kept going. And this was the origins of Beresheet from Space IL, of iSpace, and I can't pronounce it correctly with the cute little bunny ears. Hakato from Japan.
Hakuto, I
Yes.
think. Yeah.
Astrobotic, a bunch of these teams that we have since seen become companies
Mm.
got their origins with the Google Lunar X Prize and have been
Lugal Gunner.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And
Yeah.
so these are teams that have been around for 20-ish years.
Yeah. And I think that leads then into what I was sort
Yeah.
of starting to prepare, which was that all of all of these companies had invested all this money, and the X Prize had been canceled, and yet they had made all these investments and had working hardware,
Yeah.
and they were ready to start trying for the moon, probably within months of when they canceled the prize. And someone said, "Hey, let's see if we can continue that process and turn these into, let's give them jobs,
And
right?" And it was, yeah, it worked out. I mean, theoretically, has worked out very well. Practically, we're having some issues, but we'll get to that.
so we saw various seed funds coming from governments. Israel was the first one to step up with Bereshit. We had the Eclipse program here in the United States, the commercial lunar eclipse. Prod,
Hmm.
I forgot the letters. I
Yeah,
just
something
complete
service.
launch service. Thank you.
Yeah,
Commercial. I can't.
commercial partner launch service, I think. Anyway, clips,
Anyways, clips.
CLPS.
We had the
Yeah.
Clips program come out, and it was the United States saying, all right, we want to go back to the moon and we want to change how we fund it. And the idea was,
Commercial lunar payload service.
I knew there was a lunar in there.
Yeah.
It was
All right.
okay. So the commercial lunar payload services was NASA saying we want delivery of stuff to the moon to be as regular as sending something via FedEx. And we were starting to get there with low Earth orbit, with the Falcon 9 launches, where it was just sort of like, okay, we're going to book a berth on a shared launch. Let's go.
Yeah.
The
Yeah,
problem
and like I
is,
think it's important. I mean, I had mentioned that you
yeah,
had the commercial, like the deliveries of supplies to the International Space Station, the commercial cargo,
yeah,
you had several companies, not just SpaceX. Others were also delivering stuff. You had the Cygnus, you had the Dream Chaser. Like you've got all these spacecraft that are
right.
delivering to the station, but and then, as you said, you do a ride share, and so you would have like maybe 40 CubeSats or three big satellites on a launch, and NASA would just be one of those satellites on that launch, and then pair it up with a commercial company or whatever. So you're kind of moving towards this place where NASA no longer has to spend a lot of time thinking about how they're going to deploy their experiments to the places that they want them to go.
And the argument was that just like with FedEx, when you pay to ship something, FedEx knows how much it should cost on average. And some packages are actually going to cost a whole lot more to ship because hardware failures, weather, and all these other things, changing gas prices in one location and not another. All
The recipient
these,
lives in the middle of a forest far away from a main road.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So
I
all
know I'm being subsidized by FedEx.
so all these different factors are just things that FedEx knows how to take care of and factor into the cost. The problem with trying to do this to go to the moon instead of to low Earth orbit is no one knows how much it actually costs on average to go to the moon because like this isn't something that just gets done every day.
Right.
They don't have the actuarial tables of 30
Yeah.
launches to look at and figure out, oh yeah, these parts go wrong this often. They don't even have one launch.
Yeah. You have the Chinese, you have the Soviets back in the 70s and 80s, you have uh, early NASA, and
Yeah.
then estimates by the folks doing the commercial Lunar X Prize or the Lunar X Prize. So yeah, nobody knows what this costs.
Yeah.
I've heard it said delivering, it's like $100 million per kilogram to deliver to the surface of the moon, right?
It
$10
yeah.
million per kilogram. Like it's expensive.
And so NASA is trying to move away from doing full cost plus fee to instead doing fixed cost to pay
Mhm.
for contracts. And this means that we have all of these little commercial companies, and these are new guys. They are literally small companies with only like 500 employees in some cases. And and they're trying to go to the moon, not getting paid enough to deliver the individual cargo missions. And they're having to use venture capital, they're having to use seed funds to hope that someday, present day investments will allow them to have future income. It's the standard model that we see with every venture tech company. It just may take them a bit longer and they may
Yes.
not all survive.
All right. So we're going to talk about, I guess, how these contracts work and what the expectations are in a second, but it's time for a break. And we're back. All right. So, this is the need that NASA addressed, that they came up with a solution. Let's come up with all these partners. They have signed all of these
Yeah.
contracts to various providers. And so how is this sort of structured?
It is literally them saying, we have this instrument, we have this rover, we have this thing. We don't care about anything else other than our thing, fly our
Mhm.
thing.
Yeah.
So
On the
it's,
moon.
yeah.
Put
So
this thing on the moon.
that's it.
Yeah.
That's
And
it.
we will pay you. Here's some money. Take this rover, get it on the moon. Yeah.
Yeah. Simple until they actually try and do it.
Yes.
There's
All right. All
may
right. Okay. We I guess we've got to go into
Yeah.
how this is. How's it going? How's it going so far?
Well, Firefly Aerospace landed Blue Ghost, and everyone else has either not fired their engines soon enough, fired their
Hmm.
engines too late, fallen over, or fallen over while still firing their
Okay.
engines.
So let's do a quick rundown of all of the clips programs so far. So who was first out of the gate?
Oh man. So of course I don't have just the Clips programs. Bearsheet was the first one out of the gate.
But that's not it. But that wasn't
That
part of the clips
wasn't
program.
Clips.
Yeah. Yeah. Do
So
you want to grab that?
yeah, hold on. I'm just scrolling because of course I have everything in front of me.
Hmm.
So the first one out of the gate for the Clips program was Astrobotic with their Peregrine lander. And and NASA had really big hopes for this company. Again, this was one of the Google Lunar XPRIZE companies. They were contracted that on their second landing, they were going to potentially take the Viper rover, which is a $500 million rover, and and Peregrine failed due to reaction thruster leak that made the spacecraft uncontrollable.
Mm.
So it just fell apart in the Earth's atmosphere 10 days after launch.
Right. It didn't even get out of Earth orbit.
No,
Yeah.
no. So, needless to say, NASA decided they are not launching Viper on Astrobotic's second mission. Um, we
But they're
actually,
also not launching Viper at all.
right,
So
right. So this
yeah.
actually probably murdered the Viper lander, which, not lander, rover, which is fully tested, fully functional, ready to go, has an entire science team. Yeah.
Mm. Okay. All right. So that was Peregrine Mission 1 from Astrobotic. What came after that?
Intuitive Machines, just like 6 weeks later, this was Nova C and Odysseus. This one fell over.
Right. And I like, it sounds like everything was going well. They were live streaming the descent. We were all
Yeah.
watching with bated breath. This is it. This was the chance to prove it. There's a lot of really interesting science experiments on Intuitive Machines 1, and it seemed to, like, it landed and
Yeah.
they lost contact, but
Yeah.
then they were able to make this sort of feeble contact with it.
Yeah.
And I think what had happened, it broke its leg.
Yeah. So it's unclear exactly how it broke its leg. It fell over, it ended up at an 18-degree angle. There were other issues with this one.
Hmm.
Uh, it turns out lunar laser ranging is hard, especially when you forget to turn your instrument on. Um, they had put a software hard stop in their laser ranger telling it do not fire so that it wouldn't go off and damage one of the human beings working on mission development. They needed to recompile, or I don't know if they were doing compiled code. They needed to redo their code before they
Yeah.
launched. They did not.
Yes.
There was
And
another laser ranger on board that was on the NASA instrument. They tried to use that.
yeah, I remember that. Yeah, that was really interesting.
So
They
the
tried to patch over to this other system.
it didn't quite get them there. Um, so it went down, it broke its leg, it fell over, it didn't get enough sunlight. It also didn't drop its camera, the Eagle camera that it was supposed to before it landed, so we didn't actually get to see what happened for a hot minute. There were a whole lot of things that went wrong with that one, except everything on board survived.
Right.
So we were getting back information saying,
Yeah.
I'm alive, deploy me, I'm alive, deploy
Yeah.
me. And nothing could be deployed because it
So
was
not nothing, not
sideways.
nothing. One, so it had
Okay,
a
okay.
a radio antenna that was going to perform some experiments about whether it could detect the the presence of life on Earth,
That, yes.
the antenna radio signals. And so it was able to deploy this antenna, and it was able to detect the presence of radio communications coming from Earth, and it was also able to detect radio emissions coming from the Milky Way,
Yeah.
and so this was like a pathfinder for a future, something that would try and search for hydrogen alpha line. No, it was the 21 centimeter line for a future mission. So it was able to sort of like just barely pull that off.
Yeah.
And I think we got like one picture home before it,
Ran out of power.
succumbed to the lunar night, which,
Yeah.
is a theme. All right, we're going to talk about the next one, which was a success,
Yes.
but it's time for another break. And we're back. All right, let's have some good news.
So this one brought me so much joy because first of all, I got to go see it launch in person back in January. Um, and so it launched on Falcon 9, iSpace, and uh, Firefly Aerospace did a ride share to the moon. Firefly took a completely different orbital path, so it went pretty much straight there. It did really good computer vision work as it was landing to figure out where it was going, how to keep its orientation upright. It was nice and squat with widely placed legs. It had great cameras so that you could see what was happening during landing, and it landed successfully, and it
Yes.
deployed the things and stuff,
Yep.
and it even observed an eclipse from the moon, which
Yeah.
is just amazing.
Yeah, it was incredible. It did a little drilling. It tried some. It tested out an electrostatic coating that would try to remove regolith from its surfaces, and that worked well. So there's like a bunch of little
Yeah.
experiments, as you said, and then it too succumbed to the lunar night.
And that's
But
fair. It was
it's fair.
designed to
Yeah,
do that.
right. It's, we're not building things with chunks of decaying plutonium in them anymore. This is fine. Okay,
I
so
have one more
now,
point. I have one more
oh,
bit of trivia I
yep,
need to share. So
okay,
the blue ghost is a kind of firefly. So Firefly Aerospace launched the blue ghost, which is a kind of firefly.
right,
And I just find that adorable, and everyone needs to know that.
yep, all right. Now bring me back down. Give me some
Yeah.
bad news.
So I have to admit, I went into last week's landing of iSpace with this. If it works, I'm going to argue that I have to see every launch of these landers because they only work if I see them. So I'm like especially sad about iSpace because It was a Google Lunar XPRIZE team. I've been cheering for them since the early 2000s. And I was there when they launched, and I wanted to have
The first
two.
one or the second one?
The most recent. Well, I have been cheering them on since the beginning, but
No, no, no,
the
no, but
first
the
one also failed.
yeah, the first one failed. Yeah,
Yeah,
Hokuto R, that mission one, it failed about a year ago, and
yeah.
so they recently launched. You watched it launch. We were all ready and excited to watch that land. But actually, there was the intuitive machines. Before we talk
Oh,
about what happened with
yeah,
iSpace,
that's
we should
true.
talk about what happened with intuitive machines 2,
I just
the
blocked it
Athena.
out. I had blocked it
Yeah,
out.
yeah,
So,
that's the bad news that I was hoping to hear about.
oh man. So what didn't go wrong with that mission?
Well, I mean, so from what I recall, it landed and it had a problem with its rangefinder as well,
Yeah,
and it ended up landing really unluckily into a little crater,
yeah,
and then it tipped over,
yeah.
and so it
It's actually
was.
unclear what order that happened in. There was, if you watched
Oh,
during the landing, it was wild because they were getting back data that their engines were still firing and their orientation, if you watch the guys who were holding the model, I'm going to use this as my model. So this is an upright lander. And they walked over to the screen with their model of the lander and they're trying to figure out what's going on. And you see them do this
yeah,
and then just walk away.
yeah, and
And
so you're thinking, like, people think that it might have been firing while it was
it
on
had
the ground.
already fallen over and it was still firing its
Wow.
engines.
Okay.
And so it ended up sideways in the dark. It
Yeah.
didn't last very long. Yet
Yeah.
again, everything on board said, "Hi, we're happy,"
Yeah. We
including a
got
little rover.
one picture.
We got one picture that annoys me because you're looking up at the Earth between the rover's legs.
Yeah.
And it's just like, that's not what you should be seeing.
Yeah. Yeah, but
And
that's what we see because that's reality. All right.
and everything that flew with it to the moon also failed. The entire launch of things toward the moon failed.
Yeah.
And
So
there's
just
also
like
Astroforge. Astroforge also failed. Sorry.
Astroforge failed. Yeah. So so what are we at now? We are so Bereshit failed. Hakuto R mission 1 failed.
Selene fell over, kind of
Yeah.
worked, kind
Odysseus
of.
failed. Athena failed. Peregrine failed. I'm running out of fingers. And
Nova
then we
C
got
failed.
which?
Nova C, that was the intuitive machines.
Yeah, yeah, that's Intuitive Machines. That's her Athena. And so um, we've got a success from Blue Ghost, and then the most recent, the one that happened last week from when we're recording this,
Yeah,
was iSpace's Hakuto R Mission 2.
yeah.
How'd that go?
It turns out lunar laser ranging is harder than people give it credit for.
Yeah,
Um, we still haven't got the full reports. People who were looking at the telemetry during landing noted that they were going really fast when their altimeter said they were really close to the surface, and they were about
yeah.
a minute closer to the surface than they thought they were.
Mm,
Yeah, so Scott Manley did a lot of work on this, just like figuring out what happened from publicly available data, and it looks like they didn't slow down early enough. They got close to the surface ahead of when they were planning, and they just landed hard.
yep.
Um, Nothing
I,
survived.
I haven't seen, like, we always get pictures from Lunar Surveyor after the attempts, and I
Lunar
haven't seen any.
Reconnaissance Orbiter.
Yeah, yeah, sorry, Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, and I haven't seen any pictures from this yet, but I'm sure they'll be out soon.
Yeah, and I mean, it's one of these things where the question I keep getting asked is why did they have so much less trouble, it seemed like
Yeah,
70 some odd years ago. And one of the things that is really being brought home by all of this is these teams are by and large trying to have smart spacecraft. Decades ago, before we were born, they were relying on kinematic equations and dead reckoning and
Yeah.
thinking they knew where the surface was and doing the, okay, we fire for this long at this time, we then fire for this long at this time. And it was like freshman physics level equations with graduate school level orbital mechanics. It was just time, position,
Yeah.
engine. And what they're doing now is they're trying to say, okay, so we can see that we're in this place. We are now going to react to being in this place. And that means you're subject to any of your environmental detection stuff gets out of sync, either with
Yeah.
time or fails, and you no longer know where you're located. You're not dead reckoning. And it's a lot harder to do something based on knowing where you are versus calculating where you are. This is why autonomous cars struggle so much.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
we're we need to solve autonomous cars before we solve autonomous landings.
And I mean, we're only covering the commercial lunar
Oh
landers. So
yeah.
we talked about Beresheet, which failed. We talked about the iSpace ones that failed. We talked about Intuitive Machines and and Astrobotic and Astroforge. Um, so we haven't talked about the government
They're
ones.
working.
They're no,
Well,
are
they're
they?
most okay.
So
Chandrayaan has become rock solid.
right. So the
Has
first
become
Chandrian
rock
failed. The
solid.
second yeah, the first Chandrian failed. The second Chandrian succeeded.
Yeah.
The Chinese have been successful so
Yeah.
far. Um, and
The
then
Russian return didn't work
there
so
was a
well.
Japanese failure.
Yeah, that was Celine. It lasted a little while. It
Yeah.
was like it got data. It also fell over.
Yeah.
Falling over is really easy to do, it turns out.
Okay. Yeah. So, but I mean, this is how this works, and I think the plan is very compelling
Yeah.
that you will have a future of lunar exploration where again you just say I need this and I need it on the moon and some provider will go no problem, we'll see you on the moon, and that sounds great, that sounds like what it should be. But and I think what's really important is to get across these things are cheap,
Oh yeah.
that we are looking at tens of millions of dollars to deploy in, a lot of these are much less than $100 million. This is a fraction of the price that other government run programs have done in the past.
The entire mission will cost that much. The amount of money NASA is spending is tiny
E-
bucks.
yeah, even less. Yeah. I mean, you think about how much NASA is spending now to get something deployed to the moon. They're only paying a part of that price. So this is really worth, like, I know it sounds like this is all not working, but Blue Ghost showed us that it's not impossible.
Yeah.
And so hopefully we will see more. And so there's like a bunch more coming, and we will sort of stay tuned, and maybe we'll do, 2 or 3 years from now, we'll come back around and do another video and we'll go like, yeah, everything's working great. Or the galactic ghoul eats lunar spacecraft for breakfast.
And the big thing that I know I for one am really looking forward to is Blue Origin is on their next launch. Their very first launch of their big old rocket was able to send a spacecraft healthy around the moon. For their second launch, they're looking to launch their Mark 1 robotic lander. And this is NASA's other contracted company for getting humans on the moon. Mark 1 is not going to be human certified. It's a cargo vessel.
Yeah.
But if they can get New Glenn working consistently, and they're 1 for 1 so far, and they can get their Mark 1 lander working, suddenly we have another path to getting humans on the moon that isn't beholden to whether or not Starship is ever made to function and
Yep.
stop polluting beaches.
Yep. Yeah. So you've got what's going to happen. I mean, potentially it's going to be the exact same thing.
Yeah,
I want this astronaut and I want him on the moon. And some provider will go, no problem. We got you. Here's what it's going to cost. But we're not there yet. I'm a big fan of this
yeah,
method, just because it's in the exact same way that NASA might say, I want this scientist and I want them in France, right? And they go like, okay, they buy a plane ticket, they get on an airplane and they go to France. They don't, no, NASA doesn't build a new aircraft to solve the problem. You know,
exactly.
I really want NASA taking on risk. I want NASA to do stuff that everybody's just too cowardly and afraid to try to do. That's my favorite version of NASA, the thrilling space agency that is out there trying crazy ideas and de-risking them so that either other space agencies or they or commercial providers or whatever can actually bring us that science fiction future that we have been promised. So,
I like the way you dream. This is
mm,
not a topic for this week. We're in fact going to take it on in a few weeks. We're waiting to see
okay.
if the US is capable of passing budgets. But
Oh, yeah,
currently we're looking at like essentially nothing, nothing.
yeah,
I'm just going to go with nothing.
yeah, yeah.
So the fact that commercial companies like Blue are Blue Origin are out there saying we see a commercial reason to develop this technology may be what keeps space going in the United States as we defund our country
Right. Well, we'll keep you posted on what happens to NASA's budget. Hopefully, we'll know an answer
before we
before
go
we
to
go on
summer
hiatus.
hiatus. Yeah,
Yeah.
we're gonna
Otherwise,
at
we'll
least
report
talk
on it
about it.
after.
Yeah,
Yeah, or we'll come back after summer hiatus and give you an update on the budget.
yeah.
All right. We will see all of you next week. Thanks, Pamela.
Thank you, and thank you to everyone out there who's supporting us through Patreon. I have to say, at my institution, my humans working on producing this show and everything we do over at CosmoQuest are the only ones that are mortified instead of terrified by the US budget because you are what pays a portion of their salary. And your donations and sponsorships matter more than ever before. This week, I would like to thank a pronounceable name. You're welcome, Doctor. Alex Cohen, Andrew Palestra, Arctic Fox, Bore Androlevsval, Benjamin Carrier, Bob Krell, Brian Cagle, Burry Gowan, Claudia Mastriani, Daniel Donaldson, David Bogarty, David Trogue, Don Mundis, Elliot Walker, Father Prax, Frank Stewart, Jeff McDonald, Gold, Gregory Singleton, James Roger, Jason Kwong, Jeff Wilson, Jimmy Drake, Joe Holstein, Jonathan H. Starver, Just Me and the Cat, Katie and Ulissa, Kimberly Reich, Larry Zott, New Zealand, Mark Schneider, Matthew Horstman, Michael Hartman, Michael Regan, Nala, Olger, Paul Esposito, Philip Grand, Rondo, uh, Robert Cordova, Ruben McCarthy, Sam Brooks and his mom, Scott Briggs, Segi Kemmler, Steve Rutley, TC Starboy, the Lonely Sand Person, Tim Garish, Tashar Nakini, Will Hamilton. Thank you all so very much.
Thanks, everyone, and we will see you next week.
All right, and then they saved.
And then they saved.
Yeah, it's terrifying right now because like one of the grants I put into the National Science Foundation last November, um, we got a letter from our program officer basically saying we can't tell you that you're going to get funded, but you're
Mm,
selectable. Can you slash your budget? How far can you slash your budget? Okay,
mm.
submit that budget. We're going to try. We don't know what our budget is. And that's like the best result so far to come out. And things are so competitive right now that one of the grants I put in came back potentially transformative to the science community, not astronomy, not planetary,
Mm.
the science community. And on the list of weaknesses were not enough existing publications. So we had publications proving it would work. We didn't have enough
Mm.
publications. Um,
Yeah, I mean, are we going to give a sneak preview? I guess this is going to turn into a sneak preview of the budget because it 100% cancels STEM outreach and
Yeah,
education.
yeah.
And
It doesn't
ye-
cancel citizen science because there's
right.
actually a mandate to leverage citizen science to lower costs. But one of my other weaknesses was I included a student on my project. That's now DEI. Um, and so, like, we're dying. We are all
Mm.
dying. Um, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so I mean, for people who haven't been keeping track of it, we got the skinny budget about a month ago, and then about a week ago, we got the full budget request. There's like a little bit of good news in it, and I'm going to give the good news, which is that the Titan Dragonfly is not getting canceled and
yes,
Vera Rubin is not getting canceled.
yeah.
So that's great. Um,
Roman is
the
getting
bad news,
canceled.
sorry, what?
Roman is getting canceled.
No, sorry, Roman is not getting canceled.
Oh, I'm okay. I
No, no,
read
sorry,
something
I
wrong.
said Viru, but I meant Roman. So
Okay,
Roman and Dragonfly are not getting canceled, which is
okay.
great. Those are the ones. Those are the two missions that I was most nervous about. Mars sample return mission is getting canceled, which is not a big
We knew
surprise.
that was coming.
Lunar Gateway is getting canceled,
Yeah.
which again is not a big surprise. SLS is getting canceled after Artemis 3, which is again not a big surprise.
No.
And you know, I think anyone who would try to make a justification for SLS going beyond Artemis 3 would have a really hard time because it's going to cost $4 billion to launch. Like there's it's expensive.
It's a
Um,
jobs program.
yeah, and so I think it's really hard to justify it. You're seeing lots of cuts across a lot of Earth science, Earth
It's 40
observation.
some odd missions you're getting killed.
Yeah, you're seeing a cut to future type stuff. So you're getting you're getting a cut to any future like advanced technology. So things like
Yeah.
research into lunar rockets and things like that. Oh, sorry, nuclear rockets. So NASA was working on this partnership with DARPA to do nuclear rockets. That's been canceled. There's a slight increase to the Mars exploration budget. So they were looking to develop Martian spacesuits in addition to the lunar spacesuits and try to sort of fast track that process and then start down the process of how we're going to send human missions to Mars.
And this is on the human exploration, not the science mission directorate. And
Right,
that's one
right.
of the key points is
Yep.
the funding that funds people like me is going away.
Yeah. And then and a lot of these changes are driven by Elon Musk's requests and requirements back
Yeah.
when several weeks ago when Musk and Trump were friends. And now we're in the situation where they are on full attack mode against each other. And so I would not be surprised if there is an entirely, if there are a bunch of revisions to the budget, because this was all very Musk friendly, and also the White House has pulled Isaacman's
Right. Nomination.
nomination as the NASA administrator. He'd already gone through one committee.
Confirmation hearings.
Yeah, and he hadn't gone through the Senate confirmation hearing yet, but that was supposed to come, and then the White House pulled him, and so now the White House hasn't announced who the replacement NASA administrator is going to be, but obviously it's going to be somebody who's going to be more in line with what they want. So we're in this state right now, and I'm sure this will get resolved to some outcome where the White House NASA budget request is based on the hopes and dreams of Elon Musk, assuming that Jared Isaacman is going to be the new NASA administrator.
So
And
it's
so it's a mess right now,
yeah.
and I would not be surprised if we see things get dramatically changed, and things could get cut deeper. Things could be pushed back into the direction they were already. And then we don't know what the Senate is going to want to do with this, because a lot of them are in states that are employing people, and we don't know what Congress is going to do. Same issue. So I think you can sort of see the White House revise it based on the current sort of attitude with Elon Musk. that, like if the White House goes through on its threats and starts investigating SpaceX for contracts, then that's going to have dramatic impact on the budgets. Then we're going to see potentially Congress push back and make a revision to the budget, and then we're going to see the Senate potentially. But at the same time, right now it's all about, do you do what the White House tells you to do, which is sort of the way the entire political establishment
And
works. So yeah.
there's a subtle feature to this. The current
Mm.
NASA acting administrator, Janet Petro, is a civil servant, which means she is legally not allowed to advocate for NASA. She's only allowed to do what the president tells her to do. When you have a NASA administrator who's a political appointee, they're allowed to basically say, look, we need this in order to succeed. And by not having someone who can advocate for NASA, you're stuck. And so you have that on one half. The other problem that we're dealing with is there's current efforts to defund research in general in this country. We have seen massive slashes to the National Science Foundation. We've seen massive slashes to the National Institutes for Health. And we're seeing universities directly being told that they have to take certain cuts. In some cases, they're saying entire universities just can't receive federal funding.
Mhm. Yeah.
And so defunding science at NASA is consistent with what we're seeing at other agencies. And this is something that will literally take generations for our country to recover from, because we're
It's the
not
whole
funding.
pipeline.
It's the whole
It's the whole
pipeline.
pipeline, right? Because you've got
You have graduate
um,
students getting letters saying we have rescinded your graduate school
you
offer.
you have you have first year university students not being permitted to join elite universities
Yeah,
from
Harvard
various
can't
countries.
give
Right.
visas.
Yeah. So
There's an
you've got
entire set of countries we're now banning.
Yeah, so you've got this pipeline of university students who come from various countries who are no longer able to come on and provide funding to the university and bring this brain power from around the world into the various universities. And then you've got them switching to their master's degrees, and then them switching to eventually going to their postdoc, the doctorate,
Yeah.
and that you're getting a serious decrease in funding that's going to be able to go to the kind of research that has made America one of the top places for science in the world, has made the top place for science in the world. I mean, no question. And
Yeah.
then you've got the kinds of positions that these people come out of no longer existing in terms of research institutions and universities able to have researchers work with them. So you're kind of taking the entire pipeline of science in the United States,
Mhm.
and it's just being dissected
Yeah.
and wrapped up at every stage of the process. And at the same time, countries like Canada are putting out little signs and saying, come to our universities. We'd be glad to have you. Same thing in Europe, same thing in China. So
Japan recently said 20 of their universities are specifically admitting students that have an offer letter from a United States university that was either rescinded, or their visa letter was
Yeah.
rescinded, or they don't feel safe going to the United States anymore. So
Yeah.
they're taking in US students
Mhm.
that had their offer letters rescinded, and they're taking in international students that would normally have come to the US that can't get here anymore, or don't
Yep.
feel safe for what are now obvious reasons
Yeah.
trying to get here.
And this is happening around the world. So
Yeah.
I think, as you said, that's the generational part, is that when you think about it, say it takes 12 years, 15 years for somebody to go from first year university student to a very productive researcher that's deeply established in an existing organization. The other thing to think about is just many of the Fortune 500 tech startup, Fortune 500 companies were founded by immigrants. So again, and they go through the university process. They go through MIT, they go to MIT, they go to Cornell, they go to Harvard, they get their degree, they start a company, The company makes tens of millions, billions of dollars, and it enriches the U.S. economy. And then that is also like they're not going to even start at MIT. They're going to end up at whatever is
Yeah.
the Canadian equivalent of that. It's like I don't know what is our most MIT college or university in Canada.
I
Concordia, University of
So
British Columbia, like
McGill
it's
is one of
crazy.
the best. So for astronomy, at
McGill,
least, I end
yeah,
up at McGill.
yeah.
Um, yeah, it's I don't know,
So
man. I don't know.
yeah, yeah, and I think unfortunately we can't say okay, and here's what this means because it's changing all the time, and so
Yeah.
we just have to go. Here's what it might mean, but tomorrow it's going to mean something totally different. There you go. Alan Gross is saying Waterloo. Yeah, that's a big one as well. Um, yeah. So
Yeah.
anyway, that's the preview for what's going to happen, and I know we're going to get emails where people are going to be like, why do you have to bring politics into this?
It's not
Um,
politics, it's
it's not
facts at
politics.
this
Like,
point.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think we can have a perfectly rational conversation about the actual
Consequences.
laws that have been done and changed, and try to predict the consequences, and it's just us laying out the facts as they
Yeah.
exist, and without us having to make any kind of judgment call about who you should vote for.
Yeah,
So,
politics is saying go make these votes.
mhm,
What we're doing is saying this
here's
is
what
what
happened.
has happened and
Yeah,
this is what it's going to lead to.
yeah, yeah, exactly. All right, we should wrap things up. So thank you, everybody, for hanging out with us this week. Thanks, Pamela, for bringing the brain. Thanks in advance to all of the editors. Going to have to deal with our nonsense. We look forward to hearing you loud and live in thrilling stereo headset or lav mic next week.
But before we go, next week on Monday, we're going to be covering the Vera Rubin Observatory's first light, and we're recording our
Yes.
episode on Wednesday. So
Yes.
next week is a weirdo week.
Yep.
Patrons will get messaged about this. If you aren't at least a free member of our Patreon, join for free at least at patreon.com/astronomycast. You really will get a whole lot more information.
Totally. Right on.
So, yeah.
All right. Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you next week.